It's a great pleasure to be here again. It's also a great pleasure to try and deal with an issue that's one of the trickiest things in clinical care and indeed in social life generally. How do you link an adverse event to a treatment? And in particular, an adverse event like violence. It's, as you'll see, the trickiest thing of all to link to a treatment. But it's an issue that's got huge implications for all of us. Let me just begin here with the issue of adverse events in general, drug-induced adverse events. And this is the thalidomide crisis. You have a child here, the advert says that your young child's life could be saved if you switched from a barbiturate sleeping pill over to the new sleeping pill, thalidomide, because if you overdose on it, if your child finds this pill, opens the top of the bottle and takes all the pills, overdoses on it, that they aren't going to be killed by it. But of course, as we know, this was a drug that produced horrific side effects. And in an effort to try and make sure that that wouldn't happen again, we put controls in place, which you might think are the kinds of controls that help us pick up the adverse effects of drugs, but in fact are controls that do just the opposite. They hide the adverse effects of drugs. What we put in place are controlled trials. Okay? The idea was to get the pharmaceutical companies to produce new pills to prove that their drugs worked and were safe before they were brought to the market. But controlled trials have a number of adverse events. Controlled trials were all about trying to get the pharmaceutical companies to bring drugs on the market to prove the drugs worked. They were going to be forced, as it were, to squeeze through the eye of a needle before they could get on the market. The idea was industry were a bunch of scurvy knaves who couldn't be trusted, and controlled trials was a way to help us dance with the industry python. Now, there are actually parts of the world where people dance with pythons. Men organize for women to dance with the pythons rather than actually dance with them themselves. And here you see a lady from Malaysia dancing with a python. She's a lady who made a mistake later on, because this can go wrong, this particular dance, if the python can grip its tail onto a fixed point. If it can do that, it can squeeze you to death. The art lies in ensuring that the python can't get a grip of anything firm. When we put control trials in place, we thought we were grappling with industry, but in fact, industry have been awfully pleased with the whole thing, because what they found is they can do control trials and hide all the data that comes out of these control trials, and that's the point at which they grip their tail onto a fixed point and are squeezing us all to death, because they hide the data from the adverse events that their drug may have caused in the course of a controlled trial. There's a further problem. The whole ethos or method behind controlled trials assumes that the observations of the individual person can't be relied upon. So we're now in a world where the observations of the person over on the right, the pilot of a near miss, are taken into account and paid heed to. If she reports that things nearly went wrong when I tried to take off on the plane on a plane flight from wherever to wherever, people pay heed and they change the system in order to make sure that these things don't happen again. But the observations of the person on the left, if she puts you on a drug and reports that this has made you become violent and hostile and possibly try to kill people, her observations aren't paid heed to. They're binned. They're regarded as anecdotes, because only clinical trials give us decent information. Her observations don't change the system at all. Okay? And that's one of the adverse effects we have from controlled trials. There's a further problem. We're in a world where the regulators and companies are very, very slow to ever say a drug has caused any problem at all. In the case of thalidomide, far from conceding that the drug caused children to be born armless and limbless, the regulatory response was, well, we don't know for sure that this drug hasn't prevented spontaneous miscarriages. It could have been that these children were going to be born anyway, or were going to have no arms and legs anyway, but wouldn't have been born because they'd have been miscarried. But this drug has prevented the spontaneous miscarriage, so now they're born, in which case the drug wouldn't have caused their armlessness and leglessness. This isn't just an argument from 1962. This drug remains on the market today in many different countries worldwide, it and variants of it. This is a photograph that's not from 1962. This is Brazil 10 years ago, where over 1,000 children have been born armless and limbless on this drug. So it's not an old and past tense issue. It's also not a response that's unique to this drug. Let me introduce you to Matt Miller. Matt Miller was a 13-year-old boy who had just changed schools. Clearly, when you go to a new school at this age, you can be a little bit nervous for a while. And during the first few weeks in his new school, he was nervous, and his teacher told his parents that he was a bit nervous and anxious. Perhaps they should bring him to a doctor. The doctor put Matt on one of the SSRIs, Zoloft. And a week after he went on this, he went into the bathroom between his parents' bedroom and his bedroom and hung himself. Frequently, when you hang yourself on drugs like the SSRIs, you're not absolutely certain you're going to kill yourself. You're toying with the idea. One of the things you'll do is you'll put a noose around your neck and press against it. And if you do that, you can accidentally press on the carotid bodies, which cause you to lose consciousness, to slip forward and hang yourself. So a lot of people who hang themselves on SSRI drugs hang themselves kneeling, which led to the response from the company that made this drug and regulators was, well, we don't know that this isn't autoerotic asphyxiation gone wrong in a 13-year-old boy. We're not going to conclude that the drug has caused him to commit suicide. This is routine regulatory and company responses to these issues. If you're waiting for the MHRA in this country, the FDA over in the States, to ever say a drug has caused a problem, you will be waiting a long time. It's not in their DNA. And there's a further problem. Now, this could be any adverse effect at all. This is an email from a woman 12 years ago to GSK. She's been put on their SSRI, Paxil, and it's been hugely helpful for her. She's less anxious on it. Could you wait till the end and we'll pick it up at the end? Okay. Hopefully you can read this, but I'll leave all of the actual slides here so you'll be able to see them later. But what she's saying to the company is this. Your pill was hugely helpful for me. Problem I have is I got pregnant and my baby had truncus arteriosus. This is a defect of the blood vessels leading out from the heart. And she wants to know, look, could your drug have caused this? Because both I and my husband are desperately keen to have a family. And even though your drug has helped me hugely, if the drug could have caused a problem, I will go off it in order to make sure that my next baby has a better chance. Okay, so here's the end of the email here. I'm not saying anything bad about your drug. It's been a miracle pill for me. I just need to know if there's any evidence that the drug could have caused the problem. The response from the company, this could have been the same if you'd got in touch with them trying to say, look, could your drug have caused me to become violent and kill my children or whatever? The response would have been the same, which is they're directing her to the product information sheet for the drug, and they wanted to go back to her doctor, who at the time was being told actively by GSK that their drug is the best drug to give to women of childbearing years, that there's no risk that it could cause any birth defects at all, just as they would have said there's no risk that it could cause you to become violent or whatever. And go to your doctor. This is the key point because he supposedly or she supposedly knows all about you. The company doesn't want to give advice because they don't know you. So whether this gets through to her or not, I'm not sure, but she gets in touch with them the next day and says, look, I really need to know, is there any research going on about your drug and birth defects of the type that my child had? I need to know because If there is any hints that I shouldn't be on this drug, even though it's going to cause me awful problems to halt it, I will halt it. Now, one of the extraordinary things about this is that she was able to get through to GSK at all, because it's terribly, terribly hard to get through to any of the pharmaceutical companies on these issues. Over in the States, they've got direct-to-consumer adverts for all their drugs, and these adverts come with a phone number on the bottom of it that links to a call center, usually in India these days. It isn't a place that's going to give you any information about whether the drug could have caused the problem or not. Adverts to people like me in journals also have phone numbers on them, and again, they don't link to GSK. GSK has a range of numbers you can call, none of which link to the medical information department at all. Nothing links to anyone who has any duty to really let you know could their drug cause the problem or not. These days, GSK will do a thing that they didn't do back then, which is they'll divert this particular woman or you to report to MHRA or FDA over in the States. And this sounds good, I'm sure, to all of you, which is, don't report to us, the company, we've got a vested interest, report to the regulator. But in fact, the company has a legal duty to follow you up if problems go wrong on a pill. FDA don't. So when they divert your reports to FDA, what they're doing is they're reducing their costs, they're reducing their legal liability, and they're reducing the status of your report to an anecdote. If they follow you up, it may become an awful lot clearer that actually the drug did cause the problem. They have a duty to follow you up, as I said, and the lady got through to GSK, so they followed her up. Here's a note that went out to her. It didn't actually get to her, we know that. One of the tricky problems she had was she lived in a terribly Christian community over in the States, one where it would not have been a good idea to have a termination. Raising the issue at all for her must have been a terribly tricky problem. Having a termination must have been a terribly tricky problem. This note from GSK will have been all about trying to get in touch with her OBGYN in order to find out could there have been any other reason that could have caused the birth defect that her baby had. It's not really about trying to find out did their drug cause the problem or not. But the note didn't get to her. Now, I said to you that they've got a duty, nevertheless, to work out did their drug cause a problem. And this could have been you if you'd been put on their drug and murdered your children or your best friend or whatever. They'll have to, if they get a report, they have to determine if their drug's unrelated to the problem or not, are unlikely to be linked to the problem or not, or whether it's possible that it could be linked or probable that it could be linked or almost certain that it was linked. In this lady's case, they decided it was almost certain that the drug had caused the problem. In your case, they could have decided that it was almost certain that their SSRI caused you to murder your children, but they wouldn't tell you. In public, they will say there is no evidence that our drug causes birth defects, even though this drug is now known to cause birth defects. Not just her birth defects, but birth defects in general. And equally, they would say there's no evidence that our drug causes people to become violent. And that's true for all companies. It's not just a GSK issue. If you're a doctor, you have no rights to find out what the data shows. If you're a patient, you've got no rights to find out what the data shows. If you're an investor in the company, however, according to the Supreme Court of the United States 2 years ago, you have a right to see what the data shows, which is a curious little anomaly. Just to come back, one more point before we get into the meat of the issues that have us, or have me here at least, which is we put control trials in place to try and make sure problems like this couldn't happen again. We put them in place in 1962.